The next one is YA, urban fantasy, and it's Terry Faust. He writes urban fantasy, mainstream young adult novels, and humorous science fiction spoofs. Recent published works include his young adult urban fantasy, Bearer of the Pearls from North Star Press, St. Cloud. His short stories have appeared in local anthologies, with Unpleasantness at 20,000 Feet being recently reprinted in Calumet Edition's Boundaries Without. Terry makes his living as a photographer, but also builds weather vanes and whirligigs. And he likes to bike. Terry, come on up.
Well, thank you, Rob, for that nice introduction. This is actually chapter 2. I will give a little bit of a background for this. Our main character is named Wendy Adair, and she has lost her parents. She's moved in with her aunt and uncle, and they have a son named Ben, who's kind of weird, kind of a nerd, and she's really curious about why he does a lot of the stuff he does. Ben trotted ahead of me down the chipped and cracked steps of the long, I should also explain, this takes place in Minneapolis, and a lot of it takes place in Minnetonka Park. Ben trotted ahead of me down the chipped and cracked steps of the longest stone stairway in history, probably the oldest one too. It wound back and forth and followed the steep bank of the creek gorge just below Minnetonka Falls. This was a longer walk than I had in mind, though it was nice to see the falls. Old trees clung to the uneven slope. Some of them had fallen over and lay rotting. The place was thick with branches and leaves. I thought they were mostly elms and oaks, but you couldn't prove it by me. They crowded over us, turning things greener and greener the further down we went. It was like we were headed into another world, or maybe another time. Sweet. The cool, moist air at the bottom smelled kind of musty. The falls were going like mad. They thundered and sent up a cloud of spray. It was pretty amazing. Ben, hold up, I called. He'd crossed over an old stone bridge without a glance at the tons of falling water. I'd only been to the falls once before on a school field trip, and I didn't remember what they'd told us. It seemed like a fairy tale land back then. I called again and figured he couldn't hear me, so I ran up and caught him. Ben, what's the rush? What? He stopped. I was hoping to look around a little. I caught my breath. You know, like watch the falls, enjoy the view. I was out of shape. I had a brown belt in judo, but hadn't been to the dojo in months. Not since Dad died. The falls? He looked up, like the flood of water gushing over the cliff surprised him. Okay, I'm down here a lot, so I guess I'm used to it. He waved his hand at the water and said, there it is, Minnetonka Falls. He gave me a second to appreciate the view, then turned and headed down the path again. Hey, wait, what's the hurry? I want to read the plaque. What for? Flash, to get some information. He halted and turned back to me. What do you want to know? Well, how about the name, Minnetonka? I remember something about an Indian legend. Yeah, people like to say it's Indian for laughing water. Minnetonka. He laughed it out, the last part, but it didn't sound amused. I get that part. The translation comes from an 1849 book titled Dakota by Mary Eastman. The ha-ha part is actually Dakota for waterfall. The source is Lake Minnetonka. And Minnie means water, I said. He looked a little surprised that I knew that much. So the name actually means waterfalls, I said. Yeah, I guess so, he said. The Dakota had the run of the place until the whites came. The Dakota are Indians. I know, I snapped. Longfellow wrote a romantic poem about all this, but he was never really here, so I guess you can take it or leave it. It was the first Minnesota state park, but then Minneapolis runs it now, so is there anything else? Geez, are you always this enthusiastic? He heaved a big sigh and looked a little apologetic. Okay, look, You can stay here and watch the falls. I'm going downstream to check on the mussels. I'll be back in 30 minutes. He went off down the path again. Wait, I'll come with. The dirt path wound through tall trees and outcrops of rock beside the creek. Roots crossed the hard-packed path. Lots of people used it. The roots stuck up like speed bumps. I banged my toes, but Ben picked his way along. The creek splashed over its rocky bed to our left, and the tree-covered walls of the gorge rose above us. 20 minutes earlier, we had been walking past bungalows with manicured lawns and trimmed juniper bushes, gardens full of daylilies and plastic yard gnomes. Now, I wouldn't have been surprised if Tarzan swung across the path. The ravine widened as we went. The ground on either side of the creek became thick with bushes. The place smelled damp and moldy. Maybe wild was a better word. There was something eerie in the air, like electricity. I wasn't sure how to describe it. I caught sight of a shadow moving through the leaves across the creek from us. Something big. It snorted. When I stopped, it vanished. I shouted, but Ben was already out of sight. I ran after him. I don't freak out easy, but this place was working on me. Ben! What? Ben's peace didn't leave room for talk or breathing. The walls of the gorge spread out, and I was glad to see more blue sky. I caught up with him. Never mind. I probably imagined it. Ben wasn't a patient guy. The last thing I wanted was for him to think I was seeing things. Through the break in the trees ahead, I glimpsed a long stone bridge arched over the creek. Beyond it, the creek spread out over a bed of rocks and splashed around a tiny island. The bridge led to a big meadow on the other shore, surrounded by trees. I stopped dead. The most gorgeous guy I had ever seen strode onto the opposite end of the bridge and stopped halfway, leaning against the low bridge wall. He watched us with a half smile. His pants were tight leather, and his dark green vest did nothing to hide a beautiful set of tan arms. Leather boots nearly reached his knees. Slim and muscular, I gave him a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. But it was his face that got me. High cheekbones, long curly red hair, full lips, and a melt-your-soul blue eyes. I wasn't talking cute. I was talking, throw me off the bus, I'd drink his bathwater beautiful. Good day, Master Preston, he said, with an Irish accent that nearly stopped my heart. Who would be this doe-eyed vision of loveliness? He nodded to me. Oh my God. Ben noticed that I'd stopped. With a muttered curse, the first I'd ever heard him use, he clomped back to me, took my arm, and said, "Don't pay attention to him." I fought his grip and whispered, "You must be out of your mind." I smiled at the stranger, and he bowed to me. "You know him?" "Yes." "It wouldn't kill you to introduce me," I hissed, still struggling to slip out of Ben's grip. "He can be bad news," Ben said. "For bad news, he is a great front page." The stranger strode towards us. At the edge of the bridge, he stopped and said, "Allow me to introduce myself, Cahill Parkin, at your service." He bowed again and came up with a killer smile. Ben started to tell me not to give my name, but it was too late. "When do you dare?" I said, and for some reason I tried to curtsy. Seeing him close up, I was not sure what age he was. He might have been 15 or 25. "When do you dare?" Cahill rubbed his chin in thought. "The fair lass of the fjord, by the oaks. Wendy, I do believe we share some history. I'm kin with Rather Foon." I had no idea what he meant, but I'd share history with him any day. Ben tugged me off balance to get me walking. "She's not sharing anything with you. Switch off the glamour, Corky." I tried to twist out of Ben's hold, but he was surprisingly strong. I said, "Let go. Listen, you wanted to ditch me at the falls. I'd be glad to stay right here until you get back." He dragged me along and said, there's a lot more to Corky than what you see. More? How could there possibly be more? He's perfect. Ben pulled me along for a few more seconds, then stopped and faced me. Wendy, listen to yourself. You just met the guy, and you sound like a dorky, lovesick 8-year-old. He was right. My thinking was not my own. And I was surprised. I'd never been boy crazy. I didn't tell Ben that, but he must have seen me return to normal because he let go of my arm. He's gorgeous, I said. It was no excuse, but it was all that I could think to say. I've seen him when he's not so gorgeous, Ben said, and looked back at the bridge. It was empty. There was no sign of cable. Ben didn't seem surprised and said, let's go. So that's how.
Do you have a favorite Minneapolis location to write about?
Well, yeah, I'd say the river flats, West River Road. So I live not too far. I take a lot of walks there.
Fair enough. Hey, thank you. Bear of Pearls is for sale back there. Terry Faust, everyone.